Hey guys, I'm your host Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to this week's episode of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Have you checked out Village of the Lost yet? My latest novella is available on Amazon right now, so if you're looking for a quick and creepy read this summer, go check it out. It's only 99 cents. That's Village of the Lost. And speaking of things that have been lost, this week we're looking at two tales from the rich folklore of old Japan. First up, a young man comes from a family that is inexplicably lucky, and this luck seems to rub off on whoever comes into contact with them. Why? Well, it turns out that an ancestor long, long ago had a run-in with a certain fox and, well, find out why in Family Protected by the Kitsune. It seemed that my family was under some sort of divine protection, rather than a curse, and the reason for that was our business partners and associates never got into accidents or fell ill. On the contrary, they were always promoted or blessed with good fortune. At first, I didn't really believe in it at all, but we received so many thank you letters and people who would ask specifically for us, even coming all the way from overseas to see us. Even large companies would bow to us and beg to work with us. So over time, I started to think that maybe it really was true. By the way, my father ran a somewhat small construction-related company. So, it was thanks to this cursed blessing that we started moving around a lot. Anyway, it was only about 200 years ago that one of my ancestors first learnt to write, so this story was passed down orally throughout the generations. Therefore, I can't give it an exact time or place. Long, long ago, there was a villager by the name of Yosaku. Yosaku went out to do his farm work like always when he happened across a golden fox with 6 tails on the verge of death. Feeling sorry for the fox, Yosaku took it home and treated it there, and thanks to his fervent efforts, the fox recovered. Yosaku then released it back into the forest. One night, 5 years later, Yosaku ran into a beautiful woman. She was apparently the fox he rescued 5 years earlier, and she wanted to pay him back for his kindness. Yosaku naturally didn't believe her, but when she transformed into a fox right before his very eyes, he had no choice. This fox said she would grant his any wish, but Yosaku honestly didn't have anything to wish for. The only thing he could wish for was that everyone could have a happy and peaceful life. When he told the fox this, she looked at him with disgust. "Are you stupid? Why would you wish for the happiness of others instead of yourself?" she said. "Because if everyone else is happy, then I'm happy too," Yosaku replied. "That's because you don't know luxury, and you're a soft touch," the fox said, and then continued with a sigh. "Fine. I'll watch over you until you think of your real wish. If you're worried about food, don't. I can easily take care of you, so don't worry about that and just take your time to think of what you want." And so, the fox started living in Yosaku's house. "Let me teach you about luxury," the fox said a few days later, and she took Yosaku to visit a large city. She brought him to a large mansion, and inside it was full of luxurious meals and beautiful women. Yosaku shrank back and was unable to touch either the food or women. Seeing him like that, the fox put some food on a plate and then fed it to him with chopsticks. The food was so good that Yosaku soon started devouring it. When he was finally full, he thanked the fox. "As long as you are satisfied, then all is well," she said. "By the way, Yosaku, don't you want to eat even more than this every single day? I could easily grant that wish for you." "No, thank you," Yosaku replied. "Once in a while is good enough. And on that note, can we take the rest of this food back to the other villagers? I'd like for them to share in it too." At this, the fox got angry. "They are the type of people to return a favor with spite, so no." Yosaku was shocked. "I don't think that they would," he said. "Listen up, Yosaku," the fox started. "Most people only return good with evil. This is the same for everyone, even those who are above you and those who are above them. Ordinary people only look to take advantage of others and better things for themselves. I've never seen such a foolish soft touch as you, but at this rate, I don't think you'll live very long." Having said that, the fox then took Yosaku home. She repeated this type of trip numerous times, but Yosaku's response was always the same. One night, the fox asked him again, "Do you still not have a wish?" Yosaku said. "I guess I still want everyone to be happy. But there is one thing I want now." The fox broke out into a grin. "Is that so? You've finally developed wants and desires like other people then. And what is it that you want?" "I want you," Yosaku said with a blush. The fox was taken aback. "Eh? Me? So you want a beautiful woman? I can give you someone far more beautiful than me." "No, I want you," Yosaku said, his expression serious. The fox's face turned bright red. I can't believe you've learned how to make fun of people. That's not very nice of you." "I'm serious," Yosaku said. The fox looked like she was about to cry. Why me? What made you fall for me?" "I don't know exactly. You have beautiful hair and skin and eyes, and I love your little quirks, and I love that you're so kind as well." "You are terrible with words," the fox cried. "But it's the first time I've been taken in by such sincerity. You're very kind, but I can't grant that wish." "Why not?" Yosaku asked. "Because I want to be with you too. When I'm with you, I feel such kindness I've never felt before. It feels natural that I'd want to do anything for you. But that's not fair. No matter how you look at it, what you gave me is far more than what I could give you. Therefore, I cannot repay you with this." "But I still love you," Yosaku said. "And if you love me, then be my wife. If you do that, then I would be beyond happy." "Very well, let us marry," the fox said. "But it's not because you wished for it. It's because I want to." Yosaku smiled. "Of course, and I look forward to our future together." Several years later, Yosaku and the fox gave birth to their long-awaited baby boy. They named him Shinsaku, and the pair had never been happier. But there was one person who looked at them with eyes full of hatred, and that was one particular woman. She had long liked Yosaku, but she was too embarrassed to tell him. Next thing she knew, Yosaku was always by the fox's side, and the relationship between the pair deepened. At first, she was able to hold her feelings back, but in time, she succumbed to her intense feelings of hatred. The woman came up with a plan to take Yosaku back from the fox. First, she had to find someone to help her, which was easy enough because she knew a man who lusted after the fox as well. That man was the village chief's eldest son. This man had a wife, but he was violent, with no charms other than his monstrous strength. He had once tried to visit the fox during the night, but she rejected him, and so he had been looking for his chance at revenge ever since. The woman convinced the man to take part in her scheme. First, they gathered information on Yosaku and the fox's weaknesses. As a result, they discovered that the fox was unable to keep her human form on the night of the full moon, and, having learnt that she was a yokai, they looked further into her weaknesses. They discovered that most yokai are weak to iron, and those who exert their power at the full moon will then be weakest at the new moon. Having learnt this, the pair set up a trap for the fox, claiming that Yosaku had been attacked by a bear whilst working in the fields, and they lured the fox to a secluded location. Normally, the fox would have been able to see through this very simple lie, but she lost all sense of composure when she heard that Yosaku was in danger, and fell into their trap. As a result, she was trapped inside an iron ring, and the man imprisoned her in the village chief's storehouse. Yosaku searched for his wife for months, but all he found was the charm she left behind for him. The woman who helped deceive the fox also pretended to help Yosaku search for his lost wife. Losing hope that she was still alive, Yosaku lost all desire to eat and finally collapsed. The woman nursed him back to health and, during this time, became close to Yosaku and his son. Several years later, after taking advantage of Yosaku's heartbreak at the loss of his wife and becoming close to his child, the pair finally agreed to get married. The woman was so happy that she ran over to the storehouse to tell the fox about what had happened. Pushed to the edge, the fox finally decided to take her revenge upon those who trapped her. At first, she butted up a man who was in love with her, and on the night of the full moon, had him remove the iron ring. Then she killed and ate him, restoring her power. Then, at Yosaku's wedding to the woman, she took the form of a fox and killed both the woman and the village chief's eldest son. Yosaku was astounded that she was still alive and that she had suddenly carried out such a violent act. When the fox came back to her senses, she sped off into the forest. Numerous hunts were carried out in the mountains after that, but each time, several people died. In time, skilled hunters from all over the country heard rumours of this fox in the mountains and travelled there to take part, but the result was always the same. Around this same time, Yosaku heard the full details of what really happened from the village chief, down on his knees as he begged forgiveness. He also learned that his son possessed a deep hatred for the fox as well. After the mountain hunts ended, there were stories of numerous spiriting aways in nearby villages. Realizing that it was the fox's work, Yosaku finally readied himself, grabbed a spear from the village chief, and set out to exterminate the fox. She greeted him in human form with a smile. "So, you're finally ready," she said. "I've been waiting for you to come and kill me." "Please stop this," Yosaku pleaded. "I'll do whatever I can to make amends, so please." "There is nothing you can do," the fox said sadly. "And there is no reason for you to make amends. That girl and I were the ones at fault here." Yosaku looked up. "Let's go home. Together. Then we'll apologize to everyone. Together. If they won't forgive you, then we'll take Shinsaku with us and move somewhere else." The fox shook her head. "We can't. I know what I did was terrible, but my hatred towards you and the villagers and people in general will never fade." Having said that, she then transformed into a massive fox, several times larger than a cow. "I don't know if this feeling will disappear once I kill you," she said, "and I'm scared to try. But if you and I battle it out, then this unpleasant feeling might disappear. Come then, Yosaku, stand up. If you won't kill me, then I will kill everyone in the neighbouring villages, starting with Shinsaku." Yosaku tightly gripped his spear. "Fox, if that's what you want, then let's go." He ran towards her. Their battle was so intense that the fox's tail destroyed all of the surrounding trees and the sound echoed in the nearby villages. Many times was Yosaku struck down, but each time he stood back up and stabbed the fox with his spear. Finally, Yosaku's spear landed a fatal blow, and the fox collapsed. "You fought well, Yosaku," the fox said with a smile. "Now deliver the finishing blow." "No, that's enough," Yosaku said. "You never intended to kill me in the first place, did you?" The fox shook her head. "No, I was fighting for real. But maybe I unconsciously went too easy on you." "Come to think of it, this is the first time we've ever really fought," Yosaku said. "You're right," the fox said with a smile. "Maybe I was unconsciously flirting with you because I was scared you would hate me. I was too happy to realize." "I'm glad," Yosaku said with a smile. "There's no way I would have won if you'd truly fought with all your strength." "Hey, I didn't hold back." Yosaku and the fox stared at each other and smiled. They were pleasant, happy smiles. When they were done, the fox chewed off one of her tails and threw it at Yosaku. What are you doing? Don't be stupid," Yosaku said, surprised. "I'm not. If you don't have at least one tail, then they won't believe I'm dead, will they?" the fox answered. Yosaku took out some medicine and applied it on the fox's tail. "Don't say such things. Let's go back together." But she sadly shook her head. "I must pay for my crime. I will give up my life and become a kami. Once I've done that, I will protect both you and Shinsaku, and, as much as I detest them, the descendants of the villagers as well." Yosaku sniffled and cried. "You're not making any sense. I don't want to leave you." The fox cried with him. "I'm sorry, Yosaku, but this is the law passed down within our family." Yosaku and the fox hugged each other and cried. Then she asked him one last time, "Yosaku, what is your wish?" Yosaku realized that his biggest wish would never be granted, and so he answered, "I wish for my happiness and Shinsaku's and that of the woman and her son and all of those who died. I wish for them all to be happy." The fox smiled with a hint of longing on her face. "Such a greedy wish, but just like you. Fine, I shall grant it." And having said that, the fox disappeared. After that, Yosaku became a monk so that he might pray for the fox, the woman, and everyone else who had died. Shinsaku was adopted by the village chief and became the next head himself. But before he died, Yosaku told Shinsaku the whole story, from meeting the fox right up until the end. The fox's tail and the spear that killed her have changed hands many times, but for some reason, they always find their way back to our family. Both of them are kept in our family home now, and the tail looks like pure gold, although to the touch, it feels like that of a normal animal. Well, I think that whole story was probably fake to begin with. As for the spear, it was a fine piece of work that's probably over 1,000 years old. And that marks the end of the story my grandmother told me about Yosaku and the fox. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's the story passed down in our family. And it will continue to do so. But every now and then, someone is born to our family with rather fox-like qualities. This next story features what I find to be one of the more interesting aspects of Shinto, the kagura. Kagura is described as a ritual ceremonial dance, and you've no doubt at least seen pictures of it, if not footage or an actual live performance yourself. The dancers, generally female shaman, wear masks and will summon and then turn into a kami throughout the performance. You can find all different types of kagura throughout Japan, but the one spoken of in this next story is a unique style with some unique masks to go alongside it. It turns out that several masks and the performances to go with them were lost throughout the years, but when several were finally recovered, a dark secret unravels. Find out what in Upside Down Woodcutter's Mask. This happened before I was born, so it wasn't something I saw or heard firsthand, and so I've had to supplement bits of the story with my imagination. Please understand. The names and places are all aliases as well. It's a bit of an uppity way to start, but by the story's end, there might be a shadow standing on your front doorstep too. The village I was born in just recently merged with several others, and was thus reborn with a different name. But the name Senba Kagura remains. This nighttime kagura has been passed down since the Muromachi period, and was originally carried out by 4 families in the village. The dance was performed to welcome and entertain the gods, who bring rice harvests and cold weather to the mountains. The dancers would spend a year visiting each shrine in the village in turn, dancing the night away under the watchful eye of the shrine parishioners. These dances used to be performed by tayu from the 4 families, but with the disappearance of all but one of these families and the lack of young people, now anyone could become one of these dancing tayu. There are documents that state that it was the Hino family from Kumano who came to this area and passed the kagura on to the 4 families. The head of the Hino family, Hino Kusashiro Atsutsune, was said to have brought a kagura mask with him, and this mask would later cast a shadow over the inhabitants of the village. In the Senba Kagura, some dances were performed without masks, but most performed with them. These masks were a device to turn the dancers from people into something other than human, and once they were on, people would understand they were dancing as kijin, fierce gods or demons, not as tayu. As such, barriers were first erected with sacred rope to create a boundary to invite the kijin into a human space, even if that was within shrine grounds. These old masks were passed down from generation to generation and said to possess great powers, so they were never to be treated roughly. There is an eerie saying in the Senba Mountain Tales, written during the middle of the Edo period, that states, "The old man's mask especially contains such terrifying powers that if left in the same trunk as other masks, it will devour them." Even today, the old man's mask is the only kagura mask that is stored independently from other masks in a tiny bamboo trunk. My father was a dancer with this mask, and he always used to say that the only time his hands ever sweat was when he put on that mask. So, the Senba Kagura has been performed for over 500 years, since the Muromachi period, but over this long history, some of its programs have been lost. According to the Senba Mountain Tales, written by Furukawa Densuke, an official assigned to a new post in Senba village, as well as various other old documents related to kagura, there are 4 dances that are no longer performed. Neither the masks nor the songs have survived, and the costumes depicted in the documents can barely be made out. This all started with the revival of one of those lost dances. On May 11th, 1923, the village office received a report that some kagura masks had been found. 2 masks were found alongside some other documents in the storehouse of the Takahashi family, an old family line. The Takahashis had been the chairman of the kagura for several generations, but when they were not blessed with a son several generations back, they adopted one and then distanced themselves from the kagura. Then, for whatever reason, the masks and dance weren't passed on to the next tayu, and so the performance was lost. Now, just because the masks had appeared, it didn't mean the dance could be revived. There was no text recording what it was. However, there was a growing momentum to bring back the lost dance, so a plan was drawn up to send some people to Kumano, home of the Hino family who originally brought the Senba Kagura with them, to recreate an approximation of the original dance. Morimoto Hiroaki, the chairman at the time and leader of the plan, then had a strange dream. He was also the head of the fire department and recognized for his just and fair character. One night, he was so tired after a kagura performance that he didn't return home, but rather slept alone in the main building of the shrine. It was then that he had a dark dream. In the dream, he was standing in darkness, like that reminiscent of deep mountains late at night. A bonfire raged before him, and a figure dressed in strange clothes with a white mask stepped forth from the darkness. Looking closer, that white kagura mask was the same one they'd found in the Takahashi storehouse, a mask they called the Yamahime, or Mountain Princess. The person in white clothing, wearing the Yamahime mask, then stepped in front of the bonfire and said to Morimoto, "I will now teach you the Yamahime dance." Then the figure started dancing. Morimoto had a hunch that this was no mere dream, and watched closely, careful not to miss a single step of the dance. Once the Yamahime was finally done dancing, the bonfire went out, and a curtain of deep darkness fell. But he did not yet wake from the dream. The bonfire lit again. This time, a figure wearing a fearsome red mask like a kijin appeared and said, "I will now teach you the Hikojin dance." This dance was a complete change to the Yamahime dance, and so this more violent performance began. That mask was also one of the ones they found in that storehouse. Once the dance was over, the bonfire once again went out and then flared to life again. This time, a man wearing a robe and tall black hat stepped out of the darkness. He wore no mask, but was an elderly man with deep wrinkles etched into the corners of his eyes. "I will now teach you the Huggy dance." Hearing his voice, Morimoto realized that this was the same man who performed the previous two dances. He shed tears as he watched the performance. They were all so passionate and sublime that it didn't appear they were being danced by a human. When he woke up, lying on the tatami mats in the main shrine hall, Morimoto immediately began to perform the same dances he'd just seen. Through repeated trial and error, he had perfectly resurrected the three dances by the time the sun shone on the mountains in the east. And this is how the lost three dances of the Senba Kagura were restored, and this history is still passed down in Senba today. It's said that the figure who appeared in Morimoto's dream was likely Takahashi Shigejiro, the previous head of the Takahashi family 5 generations earlier. He was apparently close to 100 years old at the time, but Morimoto said, breaking down in tears, that it was the same performance he'd seen his great-grandfather give when he was just a young boy. So, of the 4 lost performances, 3 had been recovered. The dance of the Yamahime, or Mountain Princess. The dance of the Hikojin, or Powerful Fire God. And the dance of the Huggy, or Clover. According to the Senba Mountain Tales, that left only one more, the dance of Kikori, or Woodcutter. However, the Woodcutter mask wasn't found in the storehouse, so this performance alone remained lost. This woodcutter's mask was said to have been brought by Hino Kusashiro Atsutsune when he arrived from Kumano, and documents said it was inscribed with the year 1498. For a period of time, this woodcutter's mask was treated as though it was the same as the old man's mask, but the old man's mask was inscribed with the year 1562, so people realised they must be separate masks. Moving forward to 1965. My father had just started to learn how to be a Taiyu dancer. After the Takahashi family found the masks in the Taisho period, the town officials and former families worked together to find the missing woodcutter mask. But no matter where they looked, they couldn't find it. Alongside a curse that made people tremble. At the time, my father was working for a construction company in the village when he heard that the woodcutter's mask had been found at one of their work sites. His boss was also a former Taiyu and the one who encouraged my father to take it up in the first place. So, my dad got permission to leave early and headed straight for the Tsuchiya family in Yahagi village. This little village was located in particularly treacherous terrain of the Semba Mountains, and although it wasn't quite as brazen as in the cities, it was the target of some discrimination. That discrimination still existed during my father's time, and he normally wouldn't want to head over there. The Tsuchiya family originally came to the village from over the mountains as guests, and they fulfilled the role as village chiefs. Numerous people who had heard the rumours gathered at their house, which had been around since the Edo period. The mother-in-law of the house, a woman in her 60s, was arguing with a town official, and my father asked another Taiyu what was going on when he arrived. Apparently, the town hall had received an anonymous phone call that morning, claiming that there was a house hiding that woodcutter's mask. "It's the Tsuchiya house," the voice said, and then hung up. Although there were several points of contention, a member from the Board of Education went over to the Tsuchiya house anyway to ask about it. "Yes, the woodcutter's mask is here," they admitted. The argument didn't seem to be going anywhere, but the family finally relented and agreed to let everyone in. There were numerous large tatami mat rooms in this old, historical house, and they walked down the long hall to stand in front of the living room at the very end, the side of the house facing the mountains. My father, who had imagined where the mask might have been hiding all these years, said he was rather disappointed at the time. The elderly woman slid open the doors, and on the other side, they saw the black face of the woodcutter's mask. At that moment, there was an awe-inspiring "Oh!" from the gathered crowd. "You must not go inside," the old woman said. "I won't say anything bad, so you must leave now," she whispered. The unearthly power of that black mask in a dark, unlit room even reached us all the way in the hall, my father said of it. In the darkness of that closed room, the woodcutter's mask hung from a large pillar located in the middle of it. But for some reason, it was hanging upside down. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, my father realized that it wasn't actually hanging from the pillar, however. Both of the mask's eyes had been hammered deeply into the pillar. "What on earth have you done?" One of the elderly Taiyu screamed at the woman, and the Board of Education official had to restrain him. "Look, I'll go take it down," the official said, to which the old woman replied, "Even if it blinds you?" An unbearable chill ran down my father's spine. According to the old woman, that upside-down mask, with its eyes hammered in, was spreading a powerful curse. She claimed every single person who went into that room would then be blinded. There wasn't a single person there who declared that stupid and then went inside the room. They understood, rather than just believed, that old Kagura masks held great powers. That was why they always placed the old man's mask in its own wicker trunk and why they took great care of hanya masks, which was said to change expression if you didn't use them for 1 year. They would be unable to take the mask without going into the room. They would be unable to enter the room without going blind. That was why the Tsuchiya family left it in that back room. This tatami room with no furniture in it was covered in dust and soot. "It has been like this since before the Meiji era," the old woman said. One of the Taiyu, wondering what to do, then said, "You, go and get that boy Taro from across the way. We'll send him in. He's blind." "Ah, of course," my father thought. It was true. The son of the Tsuchiya's neighbor couldn't see. They could send him in to get the mask. The old woman, however, shook her head glumly. Then she started to speak of the history of that woodcutter's mask. It was said that the 4 families that Hino Kusashiro Atsutsune passed the kagura down to prospered greatly. But, according to the old woman, the Tsuchiya family had passed down the old kagura performances long before those 4 families. In fact, the Tsuchiya family, guests from far away, just like the Hino family, had actually passed down the Senba kagura before the Hinos, and were the originators of said performance. However, they were pushed aside in favour of the kagura brought from afar, and their various performances and masks, such as the Yamahime, were stolen from them. And the woodcutter's mask was a hereditary mask that had come with the Tsuchiya family from lands far, far away. All the documents claiming that it was from the Hino family were false. Perhaps because of this history, even after the handing down of the kagura dances was broken down to just those 4 families, it became a custom to never take a Taiyu from the Tsuchiya family. However, by the end of the Edo period, a Taiyu from the Tsuchiya family was finally chosen. Without hesitation, Tsuchiya Jinpei requested the woodcutter's mask. However, on the night he wore it, he went mad beneath the flowering cherry blossom trees and ran around the village. He screamed in a voice that didn't sound human. "The soil and rice have withered! The streams and wells have dried up!" He then drove nails into his own eyes through the mask and jumped from a cliff on the outskirts of the village, killing himself in the process. Jinpei's older sister secretly removed the mask from his corpse, returned home with it, and then hung it upside down on the pillar in the back room. That year, the village suffered from an unprecedented famine, and there were numerous unexplainable deaths in the house with a shadow standing by the door. It was said that the woodcutter's mask was both a woodcutter and a kami in and of itself, and being forced to speak the words of another kami, to dance the steps of another kami, the rage within that mask built up and lingered over many long years. And so, the kami borrowed Jinpei's body and spread his curse throughout the village. In other words, it was revenge on the Hino-style kagura from the Tsuchiya-style kagura. And that mask was still in their back room, still cursing the village. My father and the others remained frozen on the spot as the old woman told her terrible tale of revenge. The tension seemed to drain from her face, and her shoulders slumped. "You can't let Taro-san do this. Next time, he will die." Hearing those words, the Taiyu and other workers grew uneasy. What she was saying was, the reason that Taro couldn't see was because he already went into the room in the past to take the mask. In the end, everyone left the Tsuchiya house. They then went to a nearby shrine to discuss what to do. Someone suggested they break down the walls and take the mask from behind, but that would be impossible unless they got permission from the Tsuchiya family to carry out such a foolish task. As they were wondering what to do, an old man stopped by their meeting place. The man, who appeared to be in his 90s, said that he would take the mask himself. If a human cannot remove it, then someone who isn't human should. They all went back to the Tsuchiya house and informed the old woman. She grasped the old man's hand and, in agreement, led him to the back room. When the sliding doors opened, the men were terrified at the sight of the woodcutter's mask again. But when a white figure appeared from the antechamber, an indescribable feeling of relief washed over them. A robed old man in white, wearing the Yamahime mask, walked towards them. As he danced and sang a divine song, he slowly proceeded further into the room. They held their breath and a strange scene unfolded before them. As a Taiyu played the drums, the Yamahime moved ceaselessly towards the mask on the pillar, painting a circle with his feet. And as soon as the Yamahime's hands touched the mask, the nails from both eyes fell and crumbled. It might have been because they were over 100 years old, but my father wasn't so sure of that. The other side of that sliding door wasn't a human domain, so he could honestly believe anything might happen there. Just as the dance ended, the Yamahime left the room with the black woodcutter's mask in hand. "I never thought I'd dance again," old man Morimoto said, taking off the Yamahime mask. The very same man who had revived the Yamahime, Hikojin, and Hagi dancers had at last taken back the woodcutter's mask as well. An indescribable feeling struck my father down, and he apparently cried. After that, the woodcutter's mask was enshrined in a shrine connected to the Tsuchiya family. Although it had never been performed, the kikori, or woodcutter's dance, had secretly been passed down in the Tsuchiya family over the years, meaning all 4 lost dances had been revived. When he later got the opportunity, my father asked old man Morimoto what he had learnt about being a Taiyu. "When you don't wear a mask, you face the gods as a human. But when you wear a mask, you face the humans as a god," he said. "Only when your body and mind are one with the kami can you start to see things," he said with a smile. In the Senba Kagura, the performance reveals that the woodcutter and the mountain princess are in love. However, some of the performances, such as the Yamahime, are said to have been completely different between the Tsuchiya and Hino styles in ancient times. In modern times, the only performance passed down in the Tsuchiya family was that of the woodcutter. So, although the mask was the same, nobody knew what the Tsuchiya-style performance of the Yamahime dance looked like. However, during the dance old man Morimoto performed, when he got the woodcutter's mask back, he discovered that the mountain princess loved the woodcutter. I think, in their dances from long ago, they loved each other as well. That was why I was able to retrieve the mask, I think. My father nodded in response. I think Kagura is a way of communicating with violent kami who one-sidedly give and one-sidedly take. It's a way of entertaining, praising, and sometimes disparaging the kami. A way for those weak people living in villages to convey their own thoughts and learn those of the kami. And that is why they dance. You can even easily replace the word kami with nature. I've heard that the Japanese kami-sama get angry easily. However, alongside their ferocious anger, there exist ways to soothe them as well. And maybe that's what old man Morimoto's Yamahime dance was to the woodcutter's mask that had long cursed Senba from the shadows. After everything that happened but several years before I was born, apparently numerous people saw a shadowy figure standing on the doorstep of old man Morimoto's house. The shadow that was said to kill for no good reason because of the woodcutter mask's curse. But that day saw the peaceful death of a great Taiyu dancer who had lived to be 100 years old. A massive thank you and shout out to this week's Kami tier member, Jojo. It's thanks to your support, along with everyone else, that I'm able to keep doing this show, so thank you very much. Don't forget to check out Village of the Lost, available on Amazon right now, and our newly revamped merchandise store at kowabana.store. And if you'd like to chat about this week's stories, come and join us in the Kowabana Discord. You can find that link in the description or on kowabana.net. You can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/TaraADevlin for exclusive bonus stories and extras, or our YouTube channel at youtube.com/KowabanaJapan for all sorts of Japanese horror you won't find anywhere else. Thanks guys, stay safe, and I'll see you again next time for even more Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.